Welcome to Iblis Manifestations. For just a half because it mixes interestingly with coffee. You know, that's why like a lot of like gothic people like to mix coffee and cigarettes together. There's something to that effect, like
a kind of mental sharpness, I guess.
Yeah. There's like, but it gives you a nice buzz as well. But it's like two compounds that like I think complement each other really nicely. Cool. Mike Barber, my friend, welcome to Iblis Manifestations. How are we doing?
Yeah, all good, man. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to have you on, man. Yeah, really excited. It's not every day you get to sit down with the Dark Emperor of Dundee, so... yeah, no, but really excited, man. Jokes aside, about the tour we've got coming up with Absu and Ancient, and honored and extremely privileged to have you on board doing the live guitars for that tour with us, so yeah, it's going to be fun.
All mine.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it.
Thank you. I think rehearsal went pretty good last night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
starting to get a feel for it now.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is just one of those things, you know, like I think maybe like TRIVAX and Gloryhammer, it might be a place people would not have normally seen like a crossover.
Yeah, probably not.
But I think if you look at like kind of like the musical background, especially for yourself, you know, you've probably done black metal longer than we have actually. So it's kind of like, I think it's important to point stuff like that out there with people. I'm sure someone in the comment right now is saying TRIVAX is not black metal. You know? It's like fucking whatever.
Someone's probably saying Gloryhammer's not power metal as well, so there's always going to be someone, you know.
That's fair enough, yeah. So maybe we should talk a little bit just about your own background, man. You know, because you've been involved with a lot of stuff over the years.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I started playing live at least, like quite seriously, probably in like now 2009. Was when I joined my first real band, which was like a black metal band. I think at the time it was called Traces, and then we had to rename the band to get out of a dodgy record deal. So rebranded as a band called Saturnian, which was pretty cool. It was kind of like Emperor, I guess. Emperor meets, I don't know, all kinds of stuff really. But yeah, that was a pretty interesting time as well. You know, that was like, you know, when you're young and full of vigor and everything's like full steam ahead, you know. We were actually like I think maybe still the only non-Scandinavian band to sign with indie recordings, probably because they decided it was a bad idea to dip their toes out of the water too far after that. But like at the time it was a big deal, you know. That was like a legendary record label, like Satyricon and Keeper Coalescent and all sorts of cool shit, you know. So that was like kind of my first real band, I guess. And then from that, you know, I kind of got some kind of reputation. Ended up being like headhunted for this new project called Nexus and Ferris, which was kind of like really harsh industrial black metal, like Aborim, the Amenta, you know, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was when I started touring like properly, I would say. You know, the first tour we ever did was with Cannibal Corpse and Behemoth, for example. You know, it was just straight from releasing the first record, and then we did one warm-up show, and then straight onto that, which was eye-opening. You know, like,
Was that 2012?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a Full of Hate tour, I think.
That's it. That's a fucking. I mean, for a first tour, Jesus Christ, like that's the that's the ticket, right?
Yeah,
there,
I think
you know?
nothing taught me more in my career really than that tour. You know, like watching those bands and the other bands as well. You know, there was like Legion of the Damned, there was Misery Index. You know, there's some good bands on the entire bill, and you know, we were just a bunch of kids. You know, just watching these like real bands playing every night, and you know, in their own ways, they're all giving it like 110%. But yeah, I mean, particularly watching like Behemoth and Cannibal Corpse, like the stage shows couldn't have been any more different, really. You know, it's like Behemoth at that time was like, I guess, the beginning of their like theatrical arc, if you want to call it that. And you know, they'd sort of pivoted to be more atmospheric and focusing more on the show rather than just the heaviness. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit more of a spectacle.
Yeah, well, that would have been technically during the Evangelion era.
It was like the end of that cycle, but just before Satanist came out the next year, I believe. But you could already tell where they were going by their sort of choice of...
That's it.
set.
Yeah. I
And
think
then-
Satanist was like early 2014, Feb 2014 it
something
came out.
like that, and I remember when I heard the album, it was no surprise that that was the kind of direction they'd gone in because of how they'd kind of arranged the set. But then in stark contrast to that, you had, like, they weren't even headlining on this tour. Cannibal Corpse were the headliner because I guess they were still the bigger band at the time. And the show was like the polar opposite, you know. It's just like they're all stood in one place. It's just only red lighting, you know. Just, but it was like, in its minimalism, it was like so perfect, you know. Like no one's even moving around apart from like corpse grinder windmilling, you know.
Yeah.
But like it was just, I don't know, there was just something so like pure about like these 4 dudes or 5 dudes, you know, just like rooted to the spot, playing like the heaviest music you've ever heard. Like,
I know what you mean with Cannibal. Like the way they start shows, where they just very casually just walk on stage. There's like zero pretense, zero theatrics. Which, for the record, is that's never how I would personally do it.
No, not
but
at
I
all.
love to see how they do it, and it's that confidence.
But it's more
that
like
we're about to rip this fucking
the
place up.
moment they start playing, it's just like captivating. Like, they don't need anything else, you know.
Absolutely.
Somehow the whole show just works, and it doesn't even, like in my head, it doesn't make any sense. But you can't really argue with how intense it is, you know. Like,
It's a bit like, it's kind of like the Motorhead version of death metal in a way.
It's stripped down to its essence, you know.
Exactly, yeah. But that's cool that you got to do that tour, man.
Yeah, that was like really formative. We did like a couple more, and then the band kind of like imploded. I started playing in this Dutch death metal band, like semi-legendary, probably for the name only. It was called Prostitute Disfigurement.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually, when I was growing up, you know, like they were on the underground scene. They were like a relatively well-known band, and they were playing.
Yeah, they still are.
Yeah, they were playing. I think maybe they're disbanded now, but like they were playing internationally. And I was studying at the time. They just gave me a call. I kind of knew them. They gave me a call, and they were like, "Do you want to play guitar?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." You know, it's something to do while I'm at university. Just like go and do the occasional like festival that weekend. Mm-hmm. We went to South America. And then it was never really my kind of thing, you know, like I was never really like a death metal guy, and the time came to write a new album, and I kind of threw a few ideas out, and the other guitarist was throwing kind of pretty different stuff out, so I was just like, nah, you know, leave us friends, and went on my own way. I guess around then, it's probably shortly after then, I was asked to join Gloryhammer as well, which was meant to just be a temporary thing, and here I am, 9 years later. Down the line.
Did you originally start as a guitar tech for those guys?
That's right, yeah. Like maybe even the first show might have been in Dundee on that tour. In fact, it was, I remember.
Right.
At that same venue, the church.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I started as guitar tech, and I kind of knew the guys already, you know. So I guess when they needed like a stand-in for Chris, they just gave me the call because they knew me. And then a couple of years after that, I ended up joining this French band, Death Code Society, who I guess the label mates with TRIVAX. I mean, they're on Osmos as well.
Yeah, well, we actually played with Death Code Society.
Yeah, that's right. I saw you guys. That was like
Yeah.
2015 or 16 or something.
October 2016.
Yeah, I remember. That was the first
It was
time.
like literally just after I got this dissection tattoo.
That was the first time I met those guys as well.
Yeah.
We'd been in some contact.
Yeah, it was us,
Ethereal as well, right?
Yeah, I think it was us, Death Code Society, Sidious.
Yeah, of course.
We're still going.
Yeah, I'm friends with their band.
Yeah. No, they're good friends of ours. Good guys. And then Ethereal were headlining the show.
Yeah, I've toured with those guys as well.
Yeah?
Yeah, did a tour with Ethereal and Dark Fortress in 2012.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
With Saturnian. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Again, like another band where you're just watching them every night and learning, because the presence is, even though the venues are much smaller.
Hi there everyone, just a quick moment of your time. This is to let you know that my band TRIVAX will be performing all across Europe come this November and December. We are going to be going on tour to support Absu joining forces with Zemail to do the 30-year anniversary of the Son of Tifereth album. And we will also be joined by Ancient. So this is quite a legendary lineup, as you can already understand, and it's an honor for us to be a part of it. District 19 are doing the courtesy of organizing this run, and we're going to be playing a lot of different places. We're going to be doing quite a number of shows in Germany. We will be playing in Italy, in Belgium, Netherlands, France, Austria, Switzerland, and that includes Eindhoven Metal Meeting, Brain Crusher from Hell in Germany, and Unholy Congregation in Belgium. And it's going to be a blast. We're very much looking forward to it. And of course, we're going to be playing in Poland as well, which will be TRIVAX's first time. This is going to be a very special run, and we are going to be supporting our album, The Great Satan, which came out via Osmos Productions on the 30th of May earlier this year. So you can expect to hear a lot of those songs, and you can also expect to see us at the merch table. So please, if you're a fan of the podcast, feel free to come along and say hello at the merch table. I will be around, and so will the rest of TRIVAX, and we look forward to seeing you all in the flesh. There will be a number of other shows that TRIVAX are also doing outside of the tour, so make sure to keep an eye out on those as well. And of course, if you do also wish to support TRIVAX, you can visit our Bandcamp page. We've got very limited number of copies of The Great Satan available on there. If you go and check out and your format of choice is currently sold out, you can also get your copies directly from Osmos Productions. And with that said, thank you for your support and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Bands like Dark Fortress just knew how to captivate a crowd, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Dark Fortress were sick. I had Victor on the podcast a couple of months
quite
ago.
well.
He's such a gentleman.
We stayed in touch for a long time after the tour.
Still
very occasionally chat now. And I still talk with their vocalist quite a lot as well, Florian.
Okay, yeah. I've never met him, but obviously...
honestly, probably the actual best musician I've ever met,
All right, okay,
He's
wow.
like a classical composer, it's his day job, and he just does metal for fun, It's insane.
I like that.
Super humble, but he's a genius.
Yeah, you need people like that, I think, in this style of music anyway, because sometimes it's always kind of almost frowned upon, or there's this shunned idea that just because the music is harder to understand, that means that it's lesser intelligent to compose it, which couldn't be further away from the truth.
Yeah, that was kind of the case with this Death Code Society band as well. The music's I'm sure you've probably listened to it.
Yeah, I'm more than familiar.
Pretty insane.
It is.
And I can remember a few of the shows we'd do, maybe something in Paris. We played to a pretty decent sized crowd, and people were just kind of stood there. I don't think they hated it, but they were probably just kind of perplexed, what's actually... They're trying to process what's happening in real time, which is understandably quite difficult. And then there was another band, I can't actually remember the name, but it was more in the vein of Archgoat or something like this, And then everyone went absolutely mental. And I remember our singer, who's Arnaud, I think you know him.
Yeah.
He was the composer of the band. He was just looking at the crowd and he was like, I don't understand, And I was like, I do, because they're all fucking drunk,
Yeah.
People just want to have a good time. And
also, simplicity has its place as well.
Yeah,
I've definitely learned that the hard way over the years, because sometimes as well, it's cool when, I've almost feel like there's a threshold as to what you can tolerate as a musician on stage, where you can really enjoy what you're doing, but then you can sort of push the technical ability of it, or the technical aspect of it rather. Now, granted, some musicians, they can't even do that. So that's a different conversation. I'm not talking about those people, but even if you are someone who's capable of doing technical shit, there comes a point where it almost stops being fun.
Yeah. And also I think it's good to exercise restraint as well. I think
Yes.
when I was younger, like probably my favorite bands when I was like a teenager were like Emperor, like Necrophagus, like Abigor, Children of Bodom, Winter Sun, you know, all the stuff that's like the most like maximalist kind of music possible, you know, in like the kind of best kind of way. And that was always what I was kind of gunning for in my own writing. But then as I got a little bit older, you know, I was like, actually, I'm not really listening to so much of these bands anymore. And I find myself gravitating towards just like simpler, catchier songs.
Yeah.
And then I think there's actually like a sweet spot. Like, I mean, Children of Bodom is actually for me a good example where they had catchy songs, but they were still quite over the top and technical, you know. And again, you know, that's probably still too much for a lot of people, but...
Maybe, yeah. I think they're a very good example of that, actually. Especially, like, I do still... I haven't listened to it for years, I feel, but that first album was just,
cool.
like, pure magic.
Like, you can still hear, like, Darkthrone influence on it and stuff like this, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, one thing that interests me, I won't talk about it for too long, but, like...
We've got time.
One thing that interests me is actually in the later stuff, like the sort of late 2010s and early whatever, like before Alexei died, he started really pushing a lot of dissection influence again. Like it was there in the beginning, and then it came back towards the end, like kind of as his, like, I guess he deteriorated and the music kind of got darker with his kind of like worldview. And there's a couple of songs which literally just like these riffs are almost like lifted from Storm of the Lightsbane, you know, like note for note, and you could tell his like mindset is just like, you know, blasting dissection, and I thought that was interesting.
But there's a lot of that. Even on that first album, I feel bad because I forget the name of the song, but you know, he's got that melody that's like, you know, like that. To me, is just like slightly sped up. Where Did Angels Lie? You know, it's like even on guitar, if you look, it's exactly in the same place, fret-wise. So yeah, there was a lot of that. You know, not to obviously take away from what they were doing, but you know, I think dissection is a good influence to have, if anything.
But yeah, my point being, I guess, as I grew older, like kind of moving away from like everything being like 11 out of 10 all the time, and sometimes backing off to, you know, 3 or 4 out of 10.
Yeah,
gives the composition a bit more space to breathe, and also to like reach people, I think, because if you're just blasting people with what is essentially kind of confusing noise for like 100% of the time, you're not really going to connect with so many people other than like the kind of few who appreciate that, you know.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and the few who appreciate that generally tend to be musicians themselves.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean,
you
like,
know,
if I'm talking about going back to black metal, I don't know many non-musicians who would listen to a band like Abigor, for example.
That's a good example.
Yeah, I don't think they're like a... But then the people who love them, you know.
Yeah. But they do have some really great stuff, for sure. I remember listening to them back in Iran, I think some of like their early 90s records, you know. Because at first I just found the image. I just found the logo. I thought, well, that looks cool.
Yeah, it's a great logo. You know? But, I mean, also, you could apply that to Dark Fortress as well. I think I spoke with Florian and possibly Victor back in the day about this, and I was always like, man, you guys should be so much bigger, you know. You're literally, like, in my opinion, like the coolest black metal band in the world. And they were like, yeah, but our music's kind of like a bit weird, you know. Like, it's kind of proggy and technical, and, you know, people just want to go to shows and bang their heads, you know.
What was really cool about them, I kind of picked up on this when I was talking to Victor as well. They were sort of like, whatever you expected the music to go, it would go just like slightly next to it, you know. I thought that was like a really interesting quirk about theirs. But like, you can only do that if you're sort of like, if you're dissatisfied with the predictable path, you know. And as a fellow songwriter, I respect that style of thinking. Not saying that's how everyone should do it, but to your point, there is something to it, because we were talking about like our appreciation of hardcore music, you know, and how I've been just obsessing over it recently, you know. But it's like, the more you play shows, the more you get used to what sort of riffs people respond to. That maybe something that if you sat at home and just thought about the kind of riffs you wanted to have, would be a different thing, you know, because if it's just listening at home or listening to something on your own, that's one thing. But when you're live in front of like, you know, hundreds, maybe thousands of people, it's a different feeling when you've got a riff that's got the punch that can move the entire audience rather than just have them staring at you like fucking, you know, dry paint. So
yeah, I think I was texting you like a week or two ago, and what you said just got me thinking. Like you know, this American band, the Acacia Strain, has always been like in my gym playlist probably since like, I don't know, 2012 or 2013.
Yeah.
And they're basically just like a hardcore band tuned to Meshuggah tuning, you know.
Yeah, you refer to them as a Meshuggah, but with a hate-breed attitude.
Yeah, that's kind of that's how I would put it. But like,
which is cool.
But I never saw them, and I kind of just became disinterested, you know, between like when I first started listening to them and recently. And then I went to one of their shows. A friend just told me, "Hey, they're playing in London. You know, do you want a ticket?" And I was really curious. You know, I was like, "Oh, damn, I haven't listened to that band in a real long time." But I'm just really curious as to how it would translate into a live setting, because it's like, you know, it could just be like a production trick, really. You know?
Yeah.
And man, it was insane. Like, you know, it's like totally different atmosphere to the shows I generally go to, but like equally just as kind of dark and just as moving as like, you know, going to watch like, I don't know, Shamash or like a band like this, you know, where it's like a kind of, there's still this like really oppressive atmosphere. You know, they're kind of using a lot of the same techniques of like droning guitars and interesting, you know, drum patterns and stuff, but just delivered in like a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I realise that's probably a bizarre comparison.
But
like,
I don't think it is.
But the feeling wasn't a million miles away, you know. It's obviously like a bit more kind of, you know, there's a bit more testosterone.
Well, and that's the thing I'm drawn towards.
A bit less kind of reflectiveness, you know. But like,
Hey, just a quick moment of your time. For the past 3 years, Iblis Manifestations has been entirely self-funded. This means that every subscription fee, every piece of equipment, all of the travel expenses have come out of my own pocket. Over time, people have asked me how they can support the podcast, and to be honest with you, up until now, the answer's been pretty straightforward, and that is simply spread the word. But now, there's another way. I have set up a Patreon account where followers of the podcast will be able to make monthly donations to the podcast, and this will help cover the costs of streaming gear and basically everything else that goes into making this show. This isn't about making a profit, and to be completely honest, it's not about breaking even either, because that's certainly not been the case for the last 3 years. However, if you do find value in the conversations that we're having on this podcast and wish to help them forward, then you can now support the show. Just head to the link in description and hit the Patreon button. And, of course, it goes without saying, thank you for supporting Iblis Manifestations. It is much appreciated.
That's the thing I'm very much drawn towards, especially nowadays. You know, I like to feel the aggression, you know, and that's why, like, I keep going back to some of the Danzig stuff. But even, like, you know, like the later Danzigs, you know, like Satan's Child and all those albums, I'm like, it's simple. And when I first heard it, I didn't think it was that good, but I actually fucking love it. It's
sometimes
like,
you just need to hear things through fresh ears.
Yeah. I'm like obsessed with that, like with late 90s, early 2000s sound of Danzig now, you know, which you could say it's still the same. It's the same direction that he's still going now, but I don't know. There's just something about those albums that just. Maybe it's a product of the times as well, you know, and it had this layer of aggression to it, which I love that kind of stuff. But the thing with that is, you know, I mean, you get that from like hip hop. There's like hip hop music that's more aggressive and darker than black metal, you know. And
yeah,
that's
just on this tour we just did, actually, me and the drummer, we stayed up one night and we were listening to this album by D12, like Eminem's old like kind of group.
Oh yeah.
I think we'd both discovered like a few years ago that we both used to listen to this one album, you know, and it's kind of like, I guess you'd call it like horrorcore or whatever, you know. It's like it's kind of this like really, really dark, twisted lyrics and like really dark music behind. And we were listening to it again, and I was like, man, like this is actually genuinely quite scary in places, you know, because they're not like talking about some spooky bullshit, you know, that they read out of a fucking book. This is like guys that have kind of they're talking about stuff that's like happened to them and their friends, and there's like a degree of like fantasy to some of it as well, you know.
Of course, yeah.
Talking, like singing about serial killers and stuff, and like I assume they're not serial killers, but you know, like equally some of the stuff where they're like talking about like growing up in Detroit and stuff like this, and like some of that shit actually just happens on a daily basis. I'm like,
yeah,
that's actually pretty fucking scary and dark as well, you know.
Exactly, like, you know, like to me, it's a really good example you make there. You know, to me, it's like Immortal Technique has far darker lyrics and poems, if you want to call them, because it is essentially poetry, compared to, let's say, I don't know, a black metal band singing about like medieval and dungeon shit, which, by the way, I still like just as
cool,
much.
You know,
I still like it.
But it's much more of an escapist take on the dark side of
definitely.
things.
So, you know, as someone who's like toured the world basically, and, you know, having played with various different bands, if you were to perhaps summarize, or rather extract your own experiences, what are some of the most important things, would you say, that you've actually learned about life, humans, or even yourself from being on the road for long periods of time?
I think we kind of spoke about this a bit yesterday, I think, but like just actually being able to connect with whoever you're on tour with as a kind of human being, understanding that like most people, even if they're not showing it, are probably in like a super high stress situation. And so, you know, the way people portray themselves initially, you know, like let's say if you're on tour with a bunch of strangers and they seem hostile, like, you know, knowing that they're probably actually exhausted and, you know, malnourished, and you know, taking that into consideration when you're like speaking to people just helps like form a connection, which I think feeds back into the whole experience. And that's kind of why I think I've been able to kind of jump always from band to band and genre to genre, is because I just form good connections with people. Like you know, if there's an opening band, you know, I can tell that they're going to be shitting their pants. They probably put all of their worldly money into, you know, buying onto some tour or paying for a
nightliner,
paying for a night, or maybe not even a
Yeah.
nightliner, but whatever they can afford, you know, maybe like a van.
Yeah.
But like, you know, they're probably petrified and they don't want to be seen to like bother you, or like, you know, when I was a kid, I wouldn't go up to like the headlining band and start like, hey, you know, how's it going? Or like, or sometimes, but like, you know, I always try and like meet these people as well and see how it's going, and you know, and sometimes these people will kind of, you know, outstrip you. You know, their career advances beyond what yours has, but they remember the connection you made, you know, and they're willing to kind of like help you out with something if you need advice, or, you know, it's happened many times where, you know, we've done like bands a favor, and, you know, further down the line, they've kind of done the same back, you know. And I think, you know, that's like I know of other people who have a lot of longevity. Like I did some session stuff with the guys from Ingested a couple of years ago. They did these tours with Lorna Shore. I did like a really short one, which was also really cool. You know, I wasn't super familiar with the band at the time, but like I think they were like just hitting their kind of like upward trajectory.
Yeah.
And, but the story that I was told by the Ingested guys was that they took the Lorna Shore dudes on tour around Europe, like the first European tour, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago or something like this. They hit it off and treated the guys really well, and the guys got bigger, and they were like, okay, now it's our turn to pay it back, you know. They took Ingested on tour around some insane, like, sold-out European tour, and
That's pretty
you know,
sick.
and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you know, more stuff like that should happen, because it almost keeps a bit of a, even though we're talking about pretty big bands here, there's still like a DIY ethic, you know. It's not the band has to say over, like, let's say a booking agent or a manager who is like, oh, just get this band because it's going to be a draw, they'll sell more tickets. And they're like, well, actually, we want to get our friends because we wouldn't be here without them, you know.
Yes. Well, I love hearing stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So I think just like kind of, you don't have to be nice to everyone, because frankly some people don't deserve to be nice to, but keeping humble and, you know, at least taking the time to get to know people before you make like a kind of preconceived opinion of them is pretty important, you know.
Well, I could give that advice to anyone. That's
yeah, I mean, it holds well.
Yeah.
I actually learned that from someone outside of touring. It was an old boss of mine.
Yeah.
You know, he basically gave me a bollocking one day, like a really severe one.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get fired. It seemed like kind of a bit unjust, but I was like, man, I'm definitely going to get fired. And at the end of the day, he called me into his office, and I was like, here it comes. And he was like, yeah, I just want to apologize to you. And, you know, basically said what I just said. He was like, my boss once told me this, you know, you never know who's going to be on the way up and who's going to be on the way down. So really, you should just try and form a good connection with everyone you meet, because, and he was like looking at me, he was like, maybe one day you're going to be my boss, you know. Like, and it just stuck with me because he was a
smart guy.
He was the CEO of this like huge advertising company, and I was just like a intern basically. And I was like, man, he really didn't have to tell me that. Like, he could have just bollocked me. And
I love that thinking, though. That's
yeah,
brilliant.
It's just like,
I mean, no wonder he was the CEO.
yeah, yeah.
Also.
But it's just one of those like moments where I was just like, not really related to music, but I've since applied it to, you know, my kind of outlook towards music.
That's really interesting. I that kind of mindset, I think, is so important, and I don't think it's stressed into people's sphere of thoughts frequently enough. What would you say are some of the, perhaps the more mental health side of things about touring and being a touring musician that perhaps the average person wouldn't necessarily understand, and like maybe a list of stuff that people don't necessarily take into consideration, whether they're fans or just someone who's just like hasn't been on this side of the aisle?
I think people probably underestimate the physical side of things kind of runs into the mental side of things, you know. So, for example, if you've been on a long tour, like for example the one we just did, you know, you're traveling.
You guys were in the States for like what?
5.5 weeks or something, I think.
That's
something
long.
like this, yeah. And so, you know, if you're traveling through the night for like, let's say like an average of like 8 to 12 hours in like pretty bumpy conditions, noisy conditions as well, you know, it's pretty tricky, at least for myself, to get a good night's sleep. You know, I generally have to kind of wait until either I pass out due to fatigue or wait until the bus stops moving and just try and sleep a few hours in the morning. But still, you know, you're only getting like between like 3 and 5 hours before you have to get up and start sound checking and eat and kind of do normal human things, you know, related to your job. I think maybe people underestimate that side of stuff and just think like, oh, well, you're in a new exciting place every day. You must be seeing so much like cool sights, you know, all the time. It's like, well, on a day like that, for example, you don't have time to see anything because you're just trying to sleep. You walk into the venue, you sound check, you eat, you play the show, eat again, and then you go to bed. And it's just kind of shot past in like a blink of an eye, and then you're doing it again for like, you know, another like 4 weeks.
Do you sometimes think about the lyrics to Wasted Years?
Not quite, but like...
Because it is kind of, that song is like perfect. Sometimes I'm just like, I think about some of the lines in like that first verse, and I'm like...
I mean, going back to the kind of mental health side of stuff, you know, when you're in the moment, like, you know, some of those like nights when you're just kind of in your bunk and you're basically in like a coffin and just being like shaken around for 8 hours, not able to sleep. You know, maybe like I'm listening to music, sometimes so tired that you can't even focus on that, you know. I just listen to white noise just to kind of like still my mind. But like, you know, those nights can feel like an absolute eternity, and sometimes you are kind of like, you know, your mind's just like going around in circles and stuff, and that's like your reality for like a month or so. But then equally, when I got home, it was just like, okay, now I'm back on my time, and I'm just kind of taking charge of what I'm doing as much as possible. You know, I can cook for myself again, I can go to the gym again, I can see my friends and family, you kind of like, I know guys who've like gone off tour and they've just like had full-on breakdowns, and you know, sometimes they've met like a tragic end, literally like just coming off a tour. You know, I know a couple of people who've taken their lives because I guess, I don't know what happened to them on the tour, but like for whatever reason, they just came home and they thought that's it.
Well, it might not even be what happens on the tour, but...
what they came back to, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can also test personal relationships, you know, like people can fight with their partners, or, you know, they lose their jobs, or...
Well, one thing, you know, and this is a common thing, is when you talk about relationships, you know, I mean, like, it's like a bit of a long distance aspect to it. And having gone through that in the past, you know, and then luckily it worked out for me, but like the dynamic is still difficult because, you know, you're away and then you're excited, you're constantly like waiting to like, it's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see you, and then your whole interaction is just like about how you can't wait to be back with each other. And then once you're back there, it's kind of like exciting, but then there's this almost like pressure to now fit into the role. And then, you know, you need and expect everything to be perfect, but really you need time to heal and recover and process what you've just gone through.
I had an interesting talk with someone a couple of weeks ago, basically just describing the kind of sensation of being on a tour of that long and kind of having this like lack of sleep and stuff. Towards the end of the tour, I was like on a call with my partner, and I was just kind of talking. I was like, you know, like before this tour, I remember like I had all these ideas about stuff I want to do and like hobbies that I want to pick up, and now I'm thinking about it. I'm just like, why the hell would I? Like, what's the point of any of this stuff, you know? And I spoke to a friend afterwards, and they were like, you know, that sounds kind of like you've gone through almost like depersonalization, you know, because you've just been doing the same thing, which is so far removed from your everyday life. You almost begin to lose the sensation of like who you are. And so I think it's really important, like for example on this tour, me, our bass player and the drummer from Hailstorm, we made a point of like at least once, usually twice a week, going to the gym. And even if it was a struggle after feeling like shit, you know, it kind of gave this feeling of like, well, I'm still grounding myself by taking the little time I do have and using it for me rather than just kind of waiting for the show to begin, or you know.
Absolutely.
And so I continued that when I got home, and just kind of, you know, again, it's about like kind of taking back your life in a way, you know.
Yeah, it's like your own sovereignty, really.
And I realise I'm making it sound like it's like the absolute like biggest, hardest thing ever to go on tour. Like it's not, you know. It's still amazing in many ways, but there is a. If I was to give advice to like, you know, people who are doing it for the first time, I'd be like, you know, don't underestimate the power of staying in touch with people at home and taking the time to go for a walk if that's all you've got time for, you know, or like just do something for yourself. Particularly if you're, you know, like me, a bit kind of introverted, you know, if you're around like people and information like 24/7, it becomes quite draining. So even just taking like an hour to go get your steps in or whatever during the day, or go find like a healthier piece of food than, you know, whatever bar food everyone else is like going to go grab, like, you know, just do something to give yourself a bit of breathing space. Then you can go back to the chaos with a kind of, you know, fresher mentality.
That is totally me, by the way.
Yeah.
I've always been that person who just like, I'm with everyone, but then I'll just disappear for like an hour or two, and then I'll come back eventually.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, you know.
No, I think it's actually, the way I look at it is a necessity, you know, because to me, you know, like even the idea of being like introvert, extrovert, you know, to me, it's kind of like, even that's like a muscle. Like for most of my life, I thought I was an introvert. Maybe I still am, but most people will look at me and say, oh no, he's an extrovert. He's constantly out there. He's always putting himself out there. But that's not how I feel internally, is a different story. And there's like a, you know, when people talk about like social batteries, that's a real fucking thing.
Yeah, well, I'm a big kind of advocate for this. Like, yeah. You know, I'm probably very similar to what you just described. When I'm in public, I'm very outgoing. If I'm on stage, I'm very like ostentatious.
Of course.
But
you gotta be if you're the Dark Lord of Dundee.
Yeah, if you're dressing like a wizard, you know, playing a flying bee. But like,
yeah, it's cool.
But you know, at home, it's kind of the opposite. Like, I really enjoy my own company, and you know, just reading a book or listening to a podcast, or you know, practicing, or you know, even sometimes just like meditating and stuff like this, going for walks. Usually, I have to have like a big, you know, 1 or 2 week period coming off a tour of just focusing on myself. Mm-hmm. Or if it is spending time with someone, it has to be with someone who kind of gives me energy, you know?
Yeah.
Which is kind of, for me at least, quite rare.
That's
but then I have, you know, I'll just basically hide for 2 weeks, and then I'll be like, hey guys, like, you know, message my friends again, like, you know, I'm ready to kind of hang out again. Like, I tried to, just after this tour, you know, I actually felt pretty good when I got home, and I went to meet some friends. We were going to go watch Yob playing in London, the Doom band.
Great band. I haven't actually seen them live yet.
And
He's actually someone I'd really like to speak to.
I was just invited, so I was like, oh, I'll check them out. I listened to it on the way to meet my friends, and I was like, this actually sounds great. You know, I'm kind of excited for this. And we had some food, and this was like 3 days after I got home, maybe 2 days, and I ate some food, and suddenly I was just hit with this like, it was like someone just dropped like a 10-ton weight on me, and I just kind of sat there, and like people were talking, and I couldn't even focus on what they were saying, and I was just like, guys, like, does anyone need a ticket? Like, I can't actually do this, you know. And there was nothing wrong with the situation. I was just like, it was too soon, you know. I hadn't recharged, and that little small social interaction of like catching up with my friends just completely, just drained every drop of energy that I had, and then I had to like go home. That was when I messaged you. I was like, you know, I think I need to like change the training regime because I was like, I need to kind of get on top of this, you know. Yeah,
that's it, man. Obviously, for everyone who doesn't know, like we've been working together on the fitness stuff for like
a year and a half.
Now. Yeah. You've done fantastic, by the way. Like credit to you. You have really taken everything on board. And it's always interesting to me. But like what you're saying about that situation, that's so fucking smart, man. Because, you know,
I mean, if I'd gone out, if I'd pushed through, I would have just stood there like staring into space and. Yeah, probably like, you know, I guess the rest of the guys would just be like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, I've had that before, you know, because it's like the thing with being an artist, a musician, and also, I guess now as an extension, a podcast host for me. Like networking and getting to know people is everything. But also like there comes a time, you know, like I had this experience quite vividly in Bergen. At Beyond the Gates, where we were like out one of the nights, you know, and then one of the days, I won't say which band it was, you know, but, you know, I was gonna like wait all day to see them, you know, because they were playing quite late, and then like, you know, because I wanted to like meet certain people, talk to so-and-so people, and then this friend is saying like, oh, hey, you know, like come over, and then I'll introduce you guys, you know, all that stuff, which is great, that's what you need. Then I kind of came to that point, I was like, I don't need this right now.
Yeah, you have to listen to yourself.
Yeah, I'd much rather just go home, eat some food, relax in silence, and go to sleep. And I did exactly that. And I have zero fucking regrets.
Yeah, exactly, because you did what was right for you, you know?
Yeah. And that's like, that was a really hard pill to swallow for me, because I've always been the guy that's like constantly pushing over boundaries. It's like, oh, and when everyone is going away, I'm the guy who's like still there. But then it's almost like a point of like self-respect as well. You know, it's like the same as what you kind of learn eventually. It's like you don't need to play every gig.
Yeah.
You don't need to play every festival. You don't need to meet every person. You know, you just need the right ones.
Yeah,
sometimes you just got to be respectful to yourself so you're functioning at your best. You know, quality over quantity, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm a really strong advocate for that in almost every aspect of life, to be honest.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's one of those. Well, Mike, man, this has been a fucking really nice chat.
Yeah.
Really? A real pleasure, man.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Is there anything you want to plug to people? Anything you got going on?
Well, obviously, if you're around in Europe in December, then we'll be sharing the stage together, which I'm super excited about. Like, that should be a really fun tour,
Likewise.
I think.
Should be good.
And then...
You got a South American tour with Gloryhammer
we got
before
a South American
that, yeah?
tour. I think like I get home like 4 days before the TRIVAX tour begins. So
nice.
It's extra important to take care of yourself in that case, you know.
Yes.
But then, outside of that, I don't know. I'm working on quite a lot of new music, like both for like Gloryhammer, but also like other projects as well. So,
yeah.
I guess that's going to be at some point in time released.
Yeah, man.
Trying to get on with stuff, trying to be a bit more productive and proactive of actually finishing projects I started. So,
you going to do anything else with Wizardthrone as well?
Yeah, this is actually one of the questions I was asked the most on the USA tour. There's like
really?
a whole bunch of people, you know, on the times that we did a couple of festivals, for example. So I was walking around the crowd watching bands, and people would approach me and they're like, "What's going on with this band?" And I was like, I actually had no idea. So many people cared about it. So
yeah, well, the album did really well. You know,
yeah,
it
was well received. It was again, I think I was maybe speaking to your drummer about this yesterday about like releasing music during the pandemic. There was just like, I remember we had a booking agent, but he was like, "There's no slots at festivals, and if a band drops out, there's like 6 bands in line, ready to take it." And then we kind of had like a lineup shift anyway. So it just kind of, and then we obviously had to like after the pandemic. Get Gloryhammer back on full steam ahead, so it just kind of fell to the wayside. But Gloryhammer has like a decent sized break next year, so I'm gonna plow through it.
Utilize it.
Yeah.
There we go. Nice one, man. Well, excited to hear what you got coming up. Thank you so much again for the chat. Can't wait to do the tour with you. And to everyone else who's been listening, hope you guys enjoyed this one and maybe you learned a couple of things as well. And we'll see you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations.